Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and this is the show about all things movies and TV. I got another awesome episode for you today. We're going to go over some news as well as one film reaction. Then that'll lead us into today's featured film, The Dark Knight Rises, the epic conclusion to the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. As a reminder, you can watch the show every week on youtube.com/the cinematic reviews, as well as you can listen to the audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and much more. You can also follow the show on Facebook, X, and Instagram for all the episode schedules, rankings, and much, much more related to the podcast. So, with that, let's head over to news and reactions. All right, so I'm going to go over some superhero movie related news and then I'll give my reaction to 28 Years Later, the newest Danny Boyle film to hit theaters this past weekend. So, up first, I have The Batman Part 2 is expected to have its schedule turn into James Gunn in June. Granted, I know today is now June 23rd, so they still got about a week to hand in that script, but James Gunn doesn't seem too worried about Matt Reeves and the anticipated Batman sequel. James Gunn basically stated to everyone, lay off of Matt. He's working very, very hard to get the sequel going, and they want to do it right, which I agree with James Gunn. Matt Reeves, it took him a few years to get that first Batman film rolling and out to theaters. So I would rather them take their time, get a good script, get a good story going, and give us an epic sequel. If they rush through these things, we've seen what happens with Marvel when they start rushing and pumping through projects like crazy. The quality tends to take a hit on it. So I do not want that to happen to the DCU. So to Matt Reeves, I say take your time. If you don't hand in that script until the end of July, I'm not worried about it, and it doesn't seem like James Gunn is either. Next up in the DC world as well, we have a title change. Originally, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow was the title for the newest Supergirl film. They have now chopped off Woman of Tomorrow, and it'll be titled Supergirl. Very similar to how James Gunn's Superman film did. At the beginning, it was called Superman Legacy. James Gunn ended up deciding to chop off Legacy at the end of it and just leave it Superman. I think this works as well. When you start adding subtitles and all that extra stuff to it, it just gets kind of cluttered and really unnecessary. So naming it Supergirl, I think, is the right move here, just like James Gunn's Superman film did recently. Switching over to Marvel, we have John Bernthal's Punisher joining Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is very exciting. We recently saw Charlie Cox's Daredevil join Tom Holland in Spider-Man No Way Home. Now we're getting John Bernthal's Punisher, which is awesome. It's a team up that I've been wanting to see since the very beginning of Tom Holland and John Bernthal's time in the MCU. If you don't know the backstory behind these two guys, they actually worked out together in preparation for both of their auditions for their right characters. So really awesome. I think it's long overdue for these two to be sharing the screen in Marvel. They'll also be sharing the screen in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. They're both been cast in that film as well. So these two have a bright future ahead of them come next year. Also, Thunderbolts director Jake Schreier, I think is how you pronounce it, is set to helm both the X-Men film and the Netflix-like approach to Marvel's TV. I think with what he did with Thunderbolts, I think this makes perfect sense for him to tackle the X-Men and Marvel's TV area of the business. So good luck to him. I think he'll do a very good job with both of those tasks. Now with today's reaction, 28 years later, this is the third film in Danny Boyle's 28 universe, I guess you can call it. Previously, we had 28 days later, and then 28 weeks later, and now we have 20 years later. I'm not sure yet with sequels. You know, they still got months. You still got 28 hours later. You still got 28 minutes, 28 seconds, 28 decades, which they probably won't do. They could do maybe 28 more days later, 28 more weeks later. I mean, there's a lot they can do with the number 28 and kind of what they've set the ground for this franchise. Um, I was very excited for this movie to come out. I'm a big fan of the previous two films, especially 28 Weeks Later, which I think is the best of the trilogy so far. But I did really like 28 Years Later. It had quite a cast. We had Aaron Taylor Johnson in it, and Ralph Fiennes leading the charge. We also had Alfie Williams playing Aaron Taylor Johnson's son, as well as Jodie Comer as uh, Alfie Williams's mother. Um, really awesome action, a lot of gore, just kind of like what the other two films did. Alex Garland, of course, wrote it as well. I think he wrote the previous two. I know he did 28 Weeks Later for sure. Um, but I'm pretty sure he did 28 Days Later as well. Um, Great job on the script, great job on the story. It was more of a smaller story, I think. You know, we get introduced to this village off the coast that's kind of minding their own business. They only go on the mainland when they need supplies and bringing their boys up of age through hunting. Otherwise, they spend most of their time on that island, which I think is very smart. A really cool aspect of this film was the rising tides with their walkway to get to the mainland. You know, you only have so many hours of the day where there's low tide, and then once the high tide comes in, you basically have to wait it out until the water levels uh, decrease, which I think was a really cool aspect of the movie. It added some more intensity, more um, what's the best word to say? More, I guess, intensity is probably the best word. Uh, it's very, very contained story. There's only a few actors on screen at a given time. Whereas, like 28 Weeks Later, it was had quite a cast, a lot of characters running around. You know, you had Jeremy Renner's character, you had Idris Elba, you had Rose Byrne running around. Just a lot of characters. This one, they decided to go a little more smaller, and a little more contained. And I really like Ray Fiennes' character. He was probably my favorite out of everyone. He's kind of kooky, but he was very smart, very purposeful in what he did. He is one of the doctors that has been kind of banished to the mainland just because of his insanity and the ways that he approaches the virus. But I think he was a very interesting character, very goofy. You know, he cracked a few jokes in there to kind of be the lovable and giddy Ray Fiennes that we all know and love. Um, but I really like this movie. I would definitely give it 4 popcorn buckets on the popcorn bucket scale. So definitely check it out, especially if you're a fan of this franchise. It's a really good installment, and I hope Danny Boyle and Alex Garland pump up some more really good quality installments for this franchise. So go check out 28 Years Later, now in theaters. It'll eventually hit streaming services. My guess will be probably Max or Netflix or one of those big ones. So check it out today. Next up, let's head to our featured film of today, The Dark Knight Rises. So, The Dark Knight Rises takes place 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight. It stars once again Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne / Batman, Tom Hardy as Bane, Selena Kyle is played by Anne Hathaway, Michael Caine returns as Alfred, Gary Oldman returns as Commissioner Gordon, Morgan Freeman also returns as Lucius Fox, and then we have newcomers Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Officer Blake, and then Marianne Cotillard as Miranda Tate / Talia al Ghul, the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, previously played by Liam Neeson. So we have quite a cast, a lot of returning faces, a lot of new faces, very exciting. So just kind of break down each of the characters. Christian Bale, really love his Bruce Wayne. It's something I've been talking about through this whole 3-part series on the podcast. His Batman, I love the fighting tactics. I love the design of the suit. Still have issues with his crazy Batman voice. Just give the dude a voice changer. I still don't understand why Nolan gives him all this tech and he decides to just make him do that voice when he could have just given a voice changer. It's one of the reasons why I love Ben Affleck's Batman was the decision for the voice changer, makes him still threatening, and it disguises his voice so nobody can tell that it's Bruce Wayne. Um, But I know Christopher Nolan has his reasons. I know Christian Bale has his reasons for doing the voice. I don't necessarily agree with it, but this is their take, their version. So I will pay respect to it. I won't trash it too much, even though it is very annoying. We see Bruce Wayne kind of kept to himself in Wayne Manor over the last 8 years. Money's starting to dry up because of projects that he refuses to release to the public, specifically the Fusion Project for clean energy for all of Gotham and possibly the entire world. But Bruce Wayne and the way his mind thinks, he sees it as a negative because somebody, hint hint, Bane, could turn it into a nuclear bomb and threaten the entire world. So he decides to bury that project and kind of bite the bullet on where the funds are going. Uh, Bane is a pretty awesome character. I love Tom Hardy's take on it. I know when they first released that little 1 minute snippet in the theaters of the plane sequence, which I really, really like. A lot of people had issues with the Bane voice. I really like it. I think it's a cool little take on the character, as well as it makes him menacing and kind of mysterious. So I'm in favor of it. I know a lot of people trashed it for being, quote unquote, Darth Vader in the DC universe, but I really like it. Um, Tom Hardy put on a ton of weight. I could try to find the exact amount, but it was quite a bit of muscle that he packed on for this role. Um, and I love the fact that he wears just combat boots, the military style Kevlar vest and pants. He's very mercenary like in here, and then of course the really cool mask. I love the design of the mask too. It is very reminiscent of the comic book like mask that he wears. Um, but it also kind of took a modern take to it. Let me see if I can find where it lists how much weight he did here. I know it was a ton, like a massive amount. And he looks jacked as crap too in there. I'm just gonna give me 2 seconds. I'm just gonna Google it instead of looking through IMDb. Sometimes it's faster that way. How much weight did Tom Hardy put on? So what? Let's see here. He went bringing his weight to around 200 to 210. So he put about 30 pounds of muscle on, which is pretty impressive. Uh, I know a lot of people uh, recognize Tom Hardy. Back in his Inception days, he was a pretty slender guy. He was fit, but he wasn't like jacked like he is in here. But 30 pounds of muscle, that's quite a big difference. I think Inception came out in 2010, so this would have been 2 years later, and it's pretty impressive with the difference there with the gym and different dieting. But I digress. Really like it. It seems like he doesn't have a whole lot to do in here, but he does. The fighting, I think Tom Hardy did very, very well. Of course, Tom Hardy has experience, from filming Warrior and Inception, so he's no stranger to stunts. But he was really good in there. I remember another person who really surprised me when I first saw this film back in 2012 was Anne Hathaway's Selena Kyle. Now, they don't actually call her Catwoman in the movie, which I think was a very interesting choice. The papers and the cops refer to her as the Cat. Um, but for the majority of the movie, they reference her as Selena, which I think was a really interesting choice. But she was great. I think she had really good chemistry with Christian Bale on screen. Bruce and Selena obviously had some attraction from the very beginning, which is really good because these two are very close together in the comics and other iterations of the two characters. They eventually do get married in a couple of the comic book runs, so it makes sense here that they would have great chemistry. But yeah, she was fantastic. She did the stunts really well. I love the part where she's riding around on the bat pod. She pretty much owns it. And I think Anne Hathaway is a pretty underrated actress from the get go. So it was terrific to get her in here. She, of course, has been in some other Christopher Nolan films, Interstellar, which is probably the biggest one other than this one. But she's fantastic. I love her. Michael Caine, like I said, returns as Alfred. He doesn't get a whole lot to do in here. I don't know if that was a Nolan choice or if it was scheduling. I'd have to look into that more. But he is in some pretty pivotal scenes. I think the biggest scene coming out of this movie for him was that stairway scene where he basically tells Bruce that I can't keep doing this anymore. You're going to have to go on without me if you're going down this road. He refuses to bury another Wayne. So very emotional moment for Alfred. He does come back towards the end when they fake Bruce Wayne's death and then they meet each other in Florence at the very last scene of the film. But he is very in and out of this movie, much like the next person I'll talk about. But Michael Caine just gives another killer performance. I think because he gets more to do in The Dark Knight, I think I like his performance more in there. But he's also very good in this one. I'm not going to take anything away from it. It's just a matter of him not getting as much screen time as he did with the other two films. But very, very good. He's in one of my quotes, which I'll talk about later on. Speaking of another character that's been kind of in and out of the movie, that is Gary Oldman's Commissioner, James Gordon. I think this one is actually due to scheduling. Let me look it up. I know this is great podcasting, me searching Google, but I'm very curious to see. Gary Oldman filming during The Dark Knight. Let's see what Google has to say. I'm pretty sure he was filming another movie back in 2012. No, yeah, he had some family, he had some other conflicts. I'm not seeing. Let's see if he was filming another movie. Doesn't look like he was. He must have been filming another movie because all it says is commitments and other family stuff. So I'm gonna leave it at that. He had other commitments, so that's probably they got rid of him pretty early on, where he gets shot by Bane's goons, and then he's laid up in the hospital for most of the film. Then he comes back towards the end to help them take down Bane's bomb. But he's still really good in here. I love his relationship with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Blake. He kind of becomes a mentor to him, as well as Batman being a mentor to Blake. But I'll get to him when we get to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But Gary Oldman's still great. He's still struggling with his decision to paint Harvey Dent as a hero, even though him and Batman know the truth that Harvey went down the dark path and became Two-Face. And he wrote out his entire manifesto, which gets revealed by Bane later on in the movie, kind of telling Gotham, hey, I lied about the Harvey Dent Act. I lied about what kind of man Harvey Dent became. Batman was the real hero. Harvey Dent tried to kill my son, even though I'm supposed to idolize this guy for the greater good of Gotham. And then he ends up choosing to resign. But later on in the movie, at the very end, we see that he did not resign, even though he wanted to, which I think is a great decision. Commissioner Gordon is a fantastic commissioner. He was put into a very difficult situation at the end of The Dark Knight, and he probably handled it as well as anybody else could have. So he's great in there. Miranda Tate / Talia al Ghul. I love Marion. She's great. I think I like her more in Inception as Leo's wife in there. She kind of doesn't get a whole lot to do. I know towards the end she does. That twist at the end where she gets revealed as Ra's al Ghul's daughter. I don't think it's very necessary. We could have just had Bane be the main villain. But of course, they have to. If with Ra's al Ghul being introduced to us in the first movie, I don't know if Nolan felt obligated to include Talia's presence in the third film because they're so closely linked in other animated movies and comics and all that other stuff. But she was kind of a throwaway character to me. We probably could have just left Bane as the main villain and this movie would have been just fine. But I love her as an actress. So if anyone's going to play Talia al Ghul, I'm glad it was Marion because she was fantastic in anything that she does. But I think this is kind of just a very unnecessary role that was just thrown in there. And a hodgepodge of a lot of characters. There's a lot of characters in here. Like Foley, I'm not going to talk about a lot. You probably could have just cut him out because really didn't add a whole lot. Yeah, he was going up against Batman for a lot of it. You know, he was kind of pessimistic for most of the film. You could have just given that to somebody else, or you didn't really need to go down that route. Um, but I get it. You know, it's a long movie. This movie clocks in at like 2 hours and 45 minutes or something. So you kind of need all these characters to stretch the story out that long. But I don't know. Foley and Talia al Ghul feel very unnecessary characters in this movie. Um, Morgan Freeman's another one that kind of just pops in and out of there as Lucius Fox. You know, kind of like, hey, remember I was in the other two films. We kind of have to connect this trilogy together. But I mean, he does play a more important role. You know, he is now the caretaker of Wayne Enterprises. You know, he supplies Batman with some tech for sure. He's overseeing the Fusion project. He gives him uh, new gadgets for his suits, and he kind of watches over the Batcave as well. So I mean, he's got a little bit more to do than some of the other characters that probably could have been cut out. But Morgan Freeman's still killing it as Lucius Fox. I love him as an actor, as a person, and of course as Lucius Fox in this universe. Very good. And then the last character I'll kind of break down, and that is Joseph Gordon-Levitt's Officer Blake, aka Robin, which I'm still not a fan of. Uh, Naming him actually Robin just doesn't make sense in my mind because the superhero name is Robin. The actual name of the kid is, you know, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Damian Wayne. Like, their names aren't Robin. Robin is a superhero. So naming him Robin just doesn't work. And then they reference him as Blake the entire time, but then at the very end is like, oh, you should use your real name, Robin. Like, really? You probably could have did something better. And I actually have a note in here asking, like, so when he takes over the mantle at the very end of the movie, is he now becoming Robin or is he becoming Batman? Because the way my mind works with, you know, the bat signal being up and running again, we get that shot of Gordon kind of touching it and like, hey, Batman's back, he's alive. But it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt going down there as Robin. So the way I understood the ending of this movie was that Officer Blake was going to become Batman. He wasn't going to become Robin, even though Nolan named the character Robin. It's very confusing, and that's kind of the issue with Nolan sometimes, where he throws in these ideas and it just doesn't really make sense. Like, he should have just kept his name Officer Blake and he just takes over the Batman mantle. Like, why throw Robin in there? Because then you're just going to confuse everybody, including myself, who really likes Robin. Like, he's one of my favorite DC characters. And then it's just really, really messy, I think, naming him Robin on the side and then giving him the Batman mantle. Just very, very confusing. But aside from that, the biggest issue I have with Gordon Levitt's character is everything he does in this movie could have been Commissioner Gordon's job. Like the investigating the tunnels, the bombs, checking on the orphan boys' home, which I guess is cool as a reminder that Bruce Wayne is an orphan. But we really didn't need that in there either. Just a lot, everything he does could have just been done by Gary Oldman. But I understand with obviously family commitments, scheduling conflicts, like Gary Oldman couldn't be in this whole movie, so they had to create a character to take over that workload. But at the end of the day, like, Gary Oldman could have did everything that Officer Blake did, so his character becomes very, very unnecessary and unneeded in this movie that's already almost 3 hours long. So that's my issue. Even though Joseph Gordon-Levitt gives a great performance, he's a great actor and he's great friends with Christopher Nolan because he, of course, filmed Inception with him. I just think he could have really cut that character out, and it kind of muddies the water with him becoming Batman, but then naming him Robin. It's just very confusing. So that's kind of the rundown of the cast. I got some few notes I wanted to cover today. Fight scenes / choreography, really good. I think I actually like the fighting a little bit more than The Dark Knight, even though I think The Dark Knight is a better movie overall. But there's a lot of really good action in here. You get Catwoman and Batman fighting Bane's henchmen together. You got that big epic battle between Bane and Batman in the streets of Gotham while it's snowing. You have all the cops fighting all the Bane's henchmen. You got Joseph Gordon-Levitt showing some acting chops going against Bane's men and some other construction guys. You have that really cool motorcycle chase sequence towards the beginning of the movie where Batman reveals himself back to Gotham, chasing him down in the Bat Pod. You get his bat plane, which they just call the Bat, which kind of confusing, but I just call it the Bat plane whenever I talk about it. Really cool design. He's got rocket launchers, machine guns, and all that, so that was really cool. But yeah, I really like the action and the fighting in here. A little bit more than the first two movies, but it's really, really awesome. Hans Zimmer score. I talked about this on both episodes already, and I'm going to repeat the same thing again on this episode. Fantastic score. I love Hans Zimmer, my favorite composer. The score for Dark Knight Rises specifically gives me really, really jacked up and really excited for Batman to fight Bane. And it's very emotional music. It kind of goes up and down throughout the movie depending on what scene we're talking about. You have like Bane's theme music, which is kind of like that Rise chant, and then you have the classic Dark Knight theme that they play throughout the entire trilogy. Really well done by Hans Zimmer for this finale of the trilogy. Really, really well done. I love the score of this movie. I tried to keep this down to 5 iconic moments. I think I ended up having 7 because it's such a long movie. But the first one, of course, the opening plane sequence, which is the sequence that they showed in the theater. I think it was right before. I can't remember what movie it was. They played it a few times before a bunch of movies. There was one specific. They did it for Tenet 2, where they showed like the first 3 minutes of Tenet, which I honestly could see them doing for the Odyssey 2 once that comes out. Nolan's currently filming that. But anyway, I digress. The plane sequence is really cool. Like I can quote that thing like word for word, pretty much. Hearing the Bane voice for the first time through the bag over Bane's head was really cool. I love the sequence where they're like fake throwing people off the plane before shooting them, and then you hear Bane go, perhaps he's wondering why they shoot the man before throwing him out of the plane. I think that was a really good way to introduce the Bane character. Like he's not an idiot. He's pretty smart. He's very tactical and purposeful in everything that he does. He plans everything out. So I think that was a really good introduction to the Bane character. Was that plane sequence really, really cool? The next one I had written down was Batman returning / the motorcycle chase scene, which was really cool. I love seeing the Batpod again. I remember going midnight showing, first showing in my town for this movie back in 2012. A lot of people dressed up as Batman, Catwoman, Riddler, Two-Face, it was basically Comic-Con in there, which was very exciting. I didn't dress up, but a bunch of people did. You got cheering and popcorn flying everywhere. This is, of course, was also the time where that horrible shooting happened in Colorado, but I won't dive into that one because I don't want to kill the mood for the podcast today. But theater experience was incredible for this. And then when Batman shows up for the first time in the Bat Pod, chasing down Bane and his henchmen on the motorcycles, everyone just erupted in the theater. It was like a football game where the home team scored. Like it was crazy, and rightfully so, because this is a great scene, great return for Batman after all these years. Really well done. I love the choreography with the bike maneuvers and the gadgets that Batman throws out at him. We get a really, really young Glenn Powell in there as one of the stockbrokers, which I didn't realize until a few years later on that was Glenn Powell. He's great in there as one of the kidnapped stockbrokers on the motorcycles. Then we have the first big fight between Batman and Bane, where Bane breaks Batman's back, which is very iconic in the comic books. And this forces Batman to go into the pit and recuperate and heal his back up in order to fight Bane again. But I love the scene. This is probably one of my favorite top 3 scenes of the entire movie, where you have, the water coming down because they're in this underground bunker in the sewers. So you have a bunch of water coming down. The design of it's really cool with the different levels of that kind of space in the sewers. Really cool choreography. Batman's throwing all the gadgets he has. It doesn't really affect Bane. We get that cool shot of Bane just pounding on Batman's mask, and you see that big crack, which ended up being one of the cool posters for the promotion of the movie. But yeah, it was a really cool scene. We get that line that Bane goes, "Oh, I was wondering what would break your spirit or your body," and then that's when he goes and cracks Batman's back, and it's pretty violent because you can hear the crack echo into the theater. It was really really cool how they filmed it. Then we have Batman finding Bane in the streets of Gotham. This is where one of my favorite photos, uh, favorite shots of the movie are, where they kind of Batman and Bane kind of like grab each other and they're like face to face. You'll see it on the episode's cover art. I know it's a different angle in the actual movie, but the shot that was released in promotion of the movie is my favorite shot of the film, and that's why I wanted to make it the episode's artwork, because I just absolutely love it. I have a drawing of it actually from the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's really really cool. But yeah, that fight between Batman and Bane in the streets of Gotham, while you have hundreds of cops and Bane's henchmen fighting each other in the snow, it's really really cool. It's just a big old battlefield basically in downtown Gotham. It's really cool how they filmed it. Then we have Batman and Selena Kyle chasing down Talia in that cool vehicle chase. You know, you have Selena Kyle in the Bat Pod. She's driving around trying to shoot down the tanks, while you have Batman flying around in the Bat plane trying to shoot them down as well. I love everything Anne Hathaway does in that scene with how she maneuvers on the Bat Pod. You know, you get the U-turn that she does, and the front wheels or both wheels actually spin out, and that's how she turns around. Really cool. I love the action in that scene. Then we have the iconic Batman sacrifices himself, where he gets into the Bat plane, hooks up the nuclear bomb, and he drives it out into the bay and watches it blow up, making everybody in Gotham think that he blew up, even though he did fix the autopilot without telling anybody. So, and then that's where we get that final shot of the film, Bruce and Alfred in Florence, where you get it's been gifted all over the internet, where you get Alfred looking over the tables and he just gives a little nod, and then you have Bruce Wayne give a little nod as well, kind of like, "Hey, I'm done with Batman. I'm living in Florence. We both can retire." Really good moment. The theater again erupted into cheers when Bruce Wayne came on screen at that scene and gave Alfred that little nod. So really great. Those are the 6 or 7 iconic moments that I took away from the film. I'm curious to see what you all think are your favorite iconic moments from the film. Now I'm going to pull up my favorite quotes. Again, I tried to keep this to about 10. Let me see how many I actually have. 1, 2, 3, 4. I did keep it down to 10. This was a little tougher because I quote this movie a lot, probably more than The Dark Knight, honestly. But I did manage to keep it down to 10 quotes. So I'll just kind of whip through those real quick. This first one's from Alfred. I've sewn you up, I've reset your bones, but I won't bury you. This, of course, is the iconic moment in front of the stairwell in Wayne Manor, where Alfred is telling Bruce that he is going their separate ways because he cannot follow him down this path and watch him die. So, really powerful line there. A couple quotes from Bane. Gotham's Reckoning. This is when he's talking to Ben Mendelsohn's character. And then I was wondering what would break first, your spirit or your body. Like I said, this is when he cracks Batman's back in the sewer. This one from Batman. So that's what that feels like. Of course, kind of a call out to when he always disappears from everybody, and they're just like, "Oh, he's gone already." So Selena Kyle did that to him, and then that was kind of like a brief comedy moment for everyone to just kind of laugh for a little bit, which I think was a really good choice. This one is this one makes me chuckle too. Sometimes this is one of the officers during that first vehicle chase. "Oh, you're in for a short night, son," as he's talking to the this older officer who's obviously was around when Batman was a thing, and then now this younger kid coming in off the force doesn't really know who Batman is, and as soon as the lights come down in that tunnel, that officer knew that, okay, Batman's coming. We're gonna be watching a cool show here, kid. So I thought I got a really good chuckle out of that. This is from Bruce when he's in the pit. I'm not afraid. I'm angry. Referencing to what Bane is doing to Gotham while he's stuck into this pit. And I haven't really been able to talk about the pit a whole lot, but I really like that scene. I know a lot of people have stated that that's kind of like, you know, oh, that's where I get up and I go take a pee or I go get a snack or something, because it's kind of, I really like it because it shows you that Bruce Wayne has to kind of solve things without his gadgets. He has to go on his body, and he has to endure this pain of watching Gotham burn in front of him, and he can't do anything. He's helpless. He's in this pit. So then he has to train his body and his spirit to climb out of this pit. I really, really like that scene. Another one from Batman. Not everything, not yet. This is referencing to when Selena Kyle is telling him, "Hey, you don't need to do this. You know, come away with me. You've given everything to this city already." And Bruce is just like, "Nah, I haven't really given everything. I have to die for this city. That's when I've given everything. Is my entire life. I have to, I have to do this. I have to sacrifice myself to save Gotham." So that was a powerful line as well. Another one from Bane: "When Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to die," which is a really cool moment. I think that was actually in the trailer, and it's very menacing. And then, of course, we get the callback, which I also wrote down, when Batman's beating the crap out of him in that one room, and he's asking where the trigger is. And we get the callback to that line where he goes, "Tell me where the trigger is, then you have a permission to die." Again, the theater erupted like a football game, like they scored a touchdown when Batman used Bane's line against him, which was really, really cool. Very strategic and really well done by Christopher Nolan writing it that way. And then the last quote I have: "A hero can be anyone, even a man doing something as simple and reassuring as putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended," which, of course, reveals to Gordon that this is Bruce Wayne, has been Batman this whole time. Really powerful moment between Bruce and Commissioner Gordon, referencing all the way back to the first film in that first scene where Gordon is placing uh, the jacket over Bruce's shoulders to kind of reassure him that everything was still going to be okay, even though he just saw his parents get murdered. So very, very awesome quotes. I really love that last one between him and Commissioner Gordon. Very, very cool. So to wrap things up, I kind of wanted to go over, if you weren't too familiar with the story behind this film, the original plan that Nolan had for The Dark Knight Rises. Originally, he wanted the Joker, of course, played by Heath Ledger, to come back, escape to Arkham, go on trial. You know, Joker had a pretty decent sized role in the third movie, but unfortunately, as you know, Heath Ledger passed away. Before the film was even released in theaters. So Nolan decided that it would be very disrespectful if they did anything Joker related with Ledger passing away. So that is why he ultimately decided to go with Bane, go with the story that they have in The Dark Knight Rises. And they don't even mention Joker at all, not a single word, which I think was very honorable and very respectful of Heath Ledger's legacy as the Joker. So I thought that was a great thing. Harvey Dent was going to return as well. He was actually originally slated to be introduced in Batman Begins. Now I don't know if he was actually going to be cast by Aaron Eckhart. I have a feeling that Nolan has wanted Aaron Eckhart from the very beginning, so I would assume if he was going to appear in Batman Begins, it would be Aaron Eckhart. But he ended up saving him for the Dark Knight and then killing him off so that he doesn't return in here. But he was going to return in here, possibly. I know there was, and I haven't confirmed this yet, but I know a few years ago I was reading some articles and some interviews with Nolan where he stated that Harvey Dent would oversee the Joker's trial, and that's how he become the Joker. Very similar to the Batman Forever, where Two Face or Harvey Dent turns into Two Face because of poison being thrown at him in the middle of court. I think Nolan originally wanted that to kind of be the origin of Two Face in this trilogy, but it just didn't work out with the way the story ended up becoming. I think that would have been really interesting if Aaron Eckhart did oversee Heath Ledger's Joker trial, which would have been really cool. But the history is history, so we got. I think The Dark Knight Rises is still a really good movie. And I'll talk about the rankings and all that in the next segment. But one more tidbit for what the original plan was for Nolan's third movie includes the Riddler appearing. I remember David Tennant's name being thrown around. As you know, he played the Doctor Who and the villain and Jessica Jones and a bunch of other movies. I think David Tennant would have been a great Riddler. We, of course, got Paul Dano as the most recent Riddler and Matt Reeves' version of Batman. But yeah, I really want. I would have been really interested in seeing Nolan's take on the Riddler. I think that would have been really cool. But getting Bane with Tom Hardy playing that role was fantastic, and I think it was great. I know this third movie gets kind of trashed on because it'll never reach The Dark Knight. Honestly, no movie's ever gonna reach that height. The Dark Knight just set that bar way too high for comic book movies or movies in general. So this third movie was kind of already at a disadvantage when it was being made and when it was released in theaters because there's just no way Nolan was going to be able to top the Dark Knight again, and he's been trying to ever since. Um, he's gotten close a couple of times, but he's just never going to reach that bar again, unfortunately. And that'll be the movie he's probably remembered more the most is the Dark Knight. It's my favorite Nolan movie. It's my favorite out of this trilogy. I'm kind of stepping on ranking segment a little bit, but yeah, no, I've absolutely loved this movie still. Um, but yeah, it's a movie that it's this trilogy that I've loved rewatching over and over again, and it's one that I've always wanted to do on this podcast, and I'm glad I finally got to talk about Nolan's Batman trilogy on the podcast. So to end the episode today, let's head over to rankings. So we're gonna rank the Dark Knight trilogy as well as ranking Christopher Nolan's films. I believe there's 12 of them. Let me pull up the Nolan rankings first. So we're gonna go from 1 to 3. So 1 is the Dark Knight. Surprise, surprise! I've been talking about that through this entire 3-part series on the podcast. The Dark Knight is my favorite Nolan Batman film. Heath Ledger's Joker is the main reason for it. I love the cinematography of it, the score. The action isn't as good as I think The Dark Knight Rises is. But really, the biggest point for me is Alfred and Bruce Wayne's chemistry and their scenes together. And then the Joker, played by Heath Ledger, really kicks this one up for me at number 1. Number 2, The Dark Knight Rises. Really love the movie. Love Tom Hardy's Bane. Love what Christian Bale does as this kind of swan song to his Batman over the years. Really great action, really great score again. The story gets a little chaotic and kind of massive for a Batman movie, but still really good. I absolutely love it. And then at number 3 is Batman Begins. That in no way means that I hate on Batman Begins. I just think when you're going as a trilogy as a whole, one of these has to be 3, and it is Batman Begins. It's the origin story. I think Batman Begins walked so that the Dark Knight could run, and then the Dark Knight Rises kind of keeps running a little too chaotic, but still really, really good. It's probably one of the best trilogies ever made, right up there with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Nolan's Batman trilogy, Back to the Future trilogy is really good. There's a few other ones that I'm drawing a blank on, but this will be marked as one of the greatest movie trilogies ever made. So, skipping over to Christopher Nolan's ranking. So he did do 12 films. I'm going to start from number 12 and work up to 1. You could probably guess what number 1 is going to be, though, because I just hinted at it a few minutes ago. So, number 12, The Following. This is Nolan's first film. I've only seen it a couple times. It's a black and white film. It was actually pretty decent. It was a very low budget film, very short film. But that is the bottom of it because he's just done way more stuff since then. Number 11, Insomnia. Really like this one. This is the Al Pacino crime thriller with Robin Williams as the villain of the film. Robin Williams was great as a villain. Al Pacino is losing his mind because they're in this part of Alaska that has like 12 or 20 straight days of just pure sunlight. So he's like completely sleep deprived at the same time trying to catch this murder. It's a very interesting film, but same reasons as The Following. It's at number 11 because Nolan has just done way better stuff since then, but it's still a really good movie. Having The Following and Insomnia as one of his first couple films is really good for Nolan. Number 10 is Dunkirk, which I know a lot of people have issues with that ranking, but Dunkirk's really good. Um, it's just really confusing with the timelines. There's three different timelines, and it took me a couple times to finally get it to where's Tom Hardy at in the movie, and where's Kenneth Branagh in the movie timeline, and then the other ones. Uh, it's just a really. I think if it would have been more of a linear movie, I would have liked it much better. But there's really good war action in there. The cast is amazing. Kenneth Branagh, like I said, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy. It's kind of a who's of Nolan guys. Um, it's still a really good movie, like I said, but it's just the timeline gets really confusing. So it's right there with number 10 for me. Number 9 is Memento. This is the Guy Pearce film where he loses his memory, and it's kind of filmed backwards, which is a really interesting take and very risky and aggressive for Nolan. Memento was one of his bigger first big blockbusters, and for him to kind of like swing for the fences was really risky. But I think he nailed it. Really good cast in there. Joe Pantoliano's in there. Um, really cool mystery crime thriller as well. But for me, what I really like out of the movie is Guy Pearce's performance, and then how it was filmed kind of backwards and piecing together like a puzzle. It was really cool. Number 8 is Oppenheimer. This is Nolan's most recent film from last year, starring Cillian Murphy as the famous Oppenheimer. Again, it's another who's who Nolan guys as a cast. Really good movie. It's kind of long. It's pretty much 3 hours, but it's still a really good film. Just because it's at number 8 doesn't mean by no means do I not like it. I'm actually gonna go through this ranking list and give all the popcorn scale rankings for it. So look out for that on social media. Number 7 is Tenet. This is another one that gets pretty confusing. I've actually seen this one probably 9 times now, and I finally think I understand the ending and all that. But this is the John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Kenneth Branagh led movie about centripetal force and kind of manipulating time to take over the world. You know, the inverse bullet shooting and all that cool stuff. Really interesting movie. Very confusing though, because like I said, it took me 9 times to grasp the big concept that Nolan was trying to do. But it's a really cool movie. I really like it. It's kind of his James Bond movie as well. Number 6, this is where I put Batman Begins. Really great origin story for Batman. Great performances by all the cast. Great story. Liam Neeson's great as the villain. Number 5, this is where I put The Dark Knight Rises. Very similar to what I just been talking about the entire episode. The action, the cast, the story, the score. It's incredible. So The Dark Knight Rises is in my top 5 for Nolan. Number 4 is The Prestige, which I actually watched last night. This because I haven't seen it in a while. Very good illusionist movie with Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale going against each other as rival magicians. Fairly cool. You got the big twist at the end, which I won't spoil for anybody if you haven't seen it. But it's really fantastic performances by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. And it's a really cool deep dive into that world of rival magicians, how they would like one would be at this theater and then across the street they'd be at the other theater and they'd be doing similar tricks and battling each other. It's really cool how Nolan did it. Number 3 is Interstellar. Fantastic movie. I love the music. I love McConaughey's performance in there. Another great Anne Hathaway performance. It's kind of his love note to 2001: A Space Odyssey. But I think he elevates that movie with what he does in here. Fantastic movie. I absolutely love it. Number 2 is Inception, which has been battling 1 and 2 for a while. This is the Leo-led movie about dreams and going into people's dreams and extracting information from them. Kind of like a dream heist, which is really cool. George McGovern-Levitt, of course, is in there. Tom Hardy. Really great cast. Really good story. Really cool concept that Nolan tries to tackle with dreams and going too deep to where you end up in limbo. It's really, really awesome. And then number 1, surprise, surprise, The Dark Knight. Same reasons why it's my favorite Batman of Nolan's. Heath Ledger's Joker performance, the story, the rest of the cast performance, the music, just an incredible movie. It's why it's my top 3 favorite films of all time. It's just absolutely incredible. So I will post the Nolan rankings as well as Nolan's Batman trilogy rankings on social media. So be looking out for those. And I'll also be sending out the popcorn scales for the Nolan films, which leads us to the last bit that I need to do today, and that is the popcorn scale rating for The Dark Knight Rises. And with that, I give it 5 popcorn buckets. I really wanted to give it the golden bucket, but I just couldn't quite get there with The Dark Knight Rises. I think mainly because of it has a lot of characters running around that could have been combined into less of a cast. Some of the story gets a little convoluted towards the end, but still really great action, really great score. But I just couldn't quite get there with giving it the golden popcorn bucket. So I'm going to give it 5 popcorn buckets, which I think is really good still for this third film in Nolan's Batman trilogy. So I will also post that as well on all the social media pages. Looking ahead on the next episode, we'll be doing F1, the newest Brad Pitt film that will be coming out later this week in theaters everywhere. And then I have a couple of ideas that I'm throwing around before we get into the Jurassic World Rebirth review, which will be coming out over July 4th weekend. So, a couple of things in the pipeline. I will be releasing that schedule out when I nail down which movies I'll be covering in between these new releases. But on the next episode, we will be covering F1 or Formula One. I know there's a lot of different names being thrown on. I'm just going to call it F1, which stars Brad Pitt, which looks like a very, very exciting movie. Maybe even a movie of the year contestant. So we'll see at that. Until next time, though, later, everyone.